594 day of Russian aggression Strait of Ukraine, the situation at the front. Today, there are numerous new developments in the Donetsk region. At first glance, it may resemble the Gaza Strip, but this is actually Avdiivka. Today, Russian forces launched a large-scale offensive operation with the aim of capturing Avdiivka. This operation involved fighter jets, bombers, helicopters, artillery, hundreds of tanks, armored fighting vehicles, and thousands of troops, all deployed within hours. The offensive began at 5 a.m. with intense bombardment. The Russians dropped dozens of 500 kg and 1,500 kg bombs on the settlement. Their targets were primarily residential areas with high-rise buildings, as well as chemical factories and other parts of the town. At least 3,000 civilians still remain in the region. Subsequently, the Russians employed artillery and assault helicopters. According to reports from Russian soldiers, they utilized at least 200 artillery systems to shell Ukrainian positions along the entire contact line. Russian sources released videos showcasing their assault helicopters launching light, multi-purpose guided rockets. After weakening the Ukrainian defenses, the Russians initiated a massive ground attack from two primary directions, from Krasnodar to Bardish and another unmentioned location, to immobilize Ukrainian troops and restrict their maneuverability with reserves. The Russians also launched attacks in 5 other directions, primarily towards Terrakon and Avdiivka itself. The objective of the offensive was to encircle Horlivka from 2 sides, sever its supply lines, and isolate it. Ukrainian reconnaissance reported that the Russians deployed approximately 2 brigades for these attacks, totaling around 8,000 soldiers. Initial skepticism over these numbers was dispelled when drone footage displayed hundreds of Russians assaulting a single Ukrainian position, typically guarded by around 15 Ukrainian fighters. Under these conditions, maintaining the frontline positions would be suicidal. The Ukrainians aimed to inflict as many casualties as possible. However, once the large Russian force approached, the Ukrainians fell back, allowing their artillery to target concentrated enemy forces. Russian footage showed 13 Ukrainian soldiers retreating before it became too dangerous. However, the Russian offensive encountered significant challenges. For starters, they suffered losses even before crossing the contact line. One video depicted a lead vehicle falling into a passage in the Russian-controlled village of Opna, disrupting the assault as the second vehicle's driver decided to retreat. Once some Russian units managed to cross the contact line and engage Ukrainian positions, they began to sustain substantial casualties. I won't display the graphic imagery, but one can imagine that such a large force presented an easy target. They faced not only conventional firearms, but also grenades, anti-tank guided missiles, mines, artillery, and even rockets from helicopters. By midday, Russian reports stated that their forces had advanced by only 200 meters. Further attacks near Krasnoyarsk were also documented. Here, Russian forces reached the railway swiftly, as the only defensive line in Krasnodar was a single tree line. After reaching the railway, the Russians began assaults on Ukrainian positions around Bardi and Stopover. Despite Russian claims of capturing both settlements and achieving operational encirclement, fighting continued between the rails and Stopover. The Russians, hoping for a swift victory, were stymied by strong Ukrainian defenses. In the end, Ukrainian forces repelled all Russian advances. Losses on the Russian side included 1 fighter jet, 7 reconnaissance drones, at least 20 tanks and armored vehicles, and a substantial number of soldiers. Many wounded were transferred to Horlivka, with local residents reporting that each hospital received hundreds of Russian troops. Russian analysts concluded that the operation couldn't be completed in a day, indicating that the Russian military should brace for extended and challenging offensive operations.